You arrive at university with all the youthful idealism and eagerness of the freshman, and the first thing that's thrust into your hands is the set list. You're given a list of set books to read by your professor or by your tutor on your particular subject, church history, medieval history, whatever it is. And the set books you read from the left to the right, and when you've read the set books, of course, you know how to think. And you begin that insidious process which we can call self-censorship. Nobody's telling you what to write, but a little voice inside you says, write like that because you'll get good marks. And a little voice also tells you over the next few weeks, if you haven't learned it at the beginning, you'd better write that way because that's the way the professor or your tutor wants you to think. And so this little process of set book censorship begins. It's a rut that gets deeper and deeper. The student gets deeper and deeper into this rut over his 3 or 4 year course until finally he emerges at the end convinced he's learned how to research history and he's learned a great deal about his particular subject. But as the rut has got deeper, of course, he can no longer see out over the edges laterally and convince himself that there's no other possible explanation for some of the great mysteries of past or present or recent history. But let us look at the professors. Why do they do that? Why are they also following along in the same rut? This self-perpetuating rut along which history has advanced? The answer is, of course, the professors have learned the simple truth that no professor has yet been sacked for swimming with the stream. And so they continue to swim along with the stream because they read the newspapers like everybody else. They see on television what happens to somebody who stands up and disbelieves. The disbelievers have a rougher ride than the believers. And so, on balance, people prefer to believe. The stream is self-perpetuating. And we've seen in our own country and Canada what happens to the disbelievers. Sometimes a very rough and harsh fate indeed, threats of deportation, arrest, eviction from their job, hounding, harassing and terrorization that goes on when people begin to disbelieve in public. So you begin to understand why the writing of history is a self-perpetuating job. The famous Nazi-hunting historian in Germany, Professor Martin Brochard in Munich, he writes a tiny hypothesis about something, about Auschwitz, about the Holocaust, or whatever. He's quoted by Professor Eberhard Jekyll, a sanguine, serious, somber-looking, pipe-smoking historian in Stuttgart. Professor Hilgruber in Cologne quotes Jekyll, Professor Jacobsen in Bonn quotes Hilgruber, and so it goes on. They're all quoting each other. 4 professors all saying the same thing. It must be true. And if you're a historian, you know that you've got to be quoted by the other professors, otherwise you are not writing the truth. And so they all go around this jolly club, all quoting each other. It's a kind of philosophical concept as a historian. Unless you're being quoted by other historians, you don't exist. You remember, like that Immanuel Kant, like the tree in the forest, which doesn't exist because you didn't hear it fall. If you're a historian who's not being quoted by anybody else, you don't really exist. And so they all go around apprehensively quoting each other in the knowledge that they too will be quoted in turn, and so they begin to exist as historians. Brochard has blown the initial... you've got 4 historians all saying the same thing. 5 historians, 10 historians all quoting each other, 20 historians. It must be true. If 20 people say the same thing, it's got to be true. And so history begins to take off like that Goodyear blimp. It takes off and it leads an existence of its own. 20 historians all chasing around in a circle, sniffing each other's tail. And you've got this circle of historians all spinning around and round and round, generating an impression of furious, frantic activity. But of course, they're just spinning around and round in the same place and not making any progress. They're not making any progress in the sense of historical research. They're all standing in the same place. Or put it another way, Professor Martin Brochard has blown that initial little balloon, the little soap bubble that starts it all off about the Holocaust or whatever. And along comes Jekyll and puts hot air in, and Jacobsen puts more hot air in, and Hilgruber puffs it bigger, and the balloon gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and the soap bubble gets bigger and begins to shimmer and wobble and become unstable, and they get apprehensive that at any moment some idiot, some appalling, incorrigible, heretical idiot may come along and prick that soap bubble. And I am that prick. Again and again I come along with the documents and I challenge them to prove me wrong. And they can't prove me wrong because I had the documents on my side.